welcome to English for You, where we have a very special article for you today. I'm Kat.
And I am Pat. So this article is all about fruits.
Yeah.
Now, when I came to Taiwan, I remember thinking there are fruits here that we don't even have in the UK.
Yeah, and they're very hard to find in the US too.
Yeah, like pomelo, dragon fruit.
Dragon fruit.
Dragon fruit is another one. Yeah, I hadn't seen star fruit before.
Oh,
I'd read about
yeah.
it, but I'd never actually had one.
If we have star fruit, but it's very expensive and it's hard to find. I think you can only find it in like import grocery stores.
Right, and
Yeah.
one fruit that's quite expensive in the UK is pineapple, but that is everywhere here and it's so good. The pineapple in Taiwan is just such a level above what we get in the UK. It's so juicy, so sweet.
Yeah, and yellow watermelon. I never saw yellow watermelon until I moved here.
Okay, so
Yeah.
there are loads of interesting fruits you can find all over Taiwan. We're going to talk about a particular one today, where it grows, how it grows, and everything about it. Let's read through the article, find out what it is.
Reading.
Drying and dyeing persimmons in Hsinpu Township. Every fall, the bright sun shines down on fragrant persimmons drying in the open air of Hsinpu Township. This area of Hsinchu County is famous for these sweet, bright orange fruits that are dried in the traditional way. The hot sun, lack of rain, and windy weather that are common during the fall create the perfect conditions for this. It doesn't just take the right time and place to dry persimmons, though. It also takes the right group of people. It is the Hakka people who created this method of preserving persimmons centuries ago. In fact, persimmons are connected to the history and culture of the Hakka. Hundreds of years ago, the Hakka suffered many wars and often needed to flee to escape conflict. They began drying their food so it would be light and easy to transport while on the road. During these difficult times, dried persimmons became their main food source. They're still an important symbol of the living history of the ancient Hakka.
So the article starts by talking about kind of where we are and what's going on. It says, every fall, the bright sun shines down on fragrant persimmons, or persimmons, I'm not quite sure how to say it. Persimmons, I'm going to stick with persimmons. Persimmons, I'm going to stick with persimmons.
Okay.
The sun shines down on fragrant persimmons drying in the open air of Hsinchu Township. Now, we describe these persimmons as fragrant. Something that is fragrant is nice smelling. So think of things like flowers, maybe perfume. Personally, for me, the smell of freshly cut grass.
Ooh,
it's
that's
one
a
of my
nice one.
favorite smells in the world. It makes me feel like I'm a kid and I'm about to run out and play football on some freshly cut grass. Do you have a favorite smell?
I think of roses because they remind me of my grandma because she has roses all over her house, or tea tree was one of my favorite
awesome.
smells. Yeah.
And all these things are fragrant,
Yes.
like these persimmons.
So these persimmons are a particular kind of fruit. They grow in this area of Taiwan. And the article goes on to say, this area of Hsinchu County is famous for these sweet, bright orange fruits that are dried in the traditional way. So yeah, they kind of look like a little bit like tomatoes, but they are a fruit and they're bright orange.
Yeah, a little sort of squashed down a bit, but
yeah.
Yeah, kind of sort of waxy almost on the outside.
Yes, yeah, that's why I
Yeah.
say they look like tomatoes to
Yes.
me. All right, so these persimmons are famous for, or Hsinchu is famous for persimmons. So if we say that A is famous for B, Hsinchu is famous for persimmons, it means that B, or the persimmons, is a thing that is particularly famous as a part of A. So people, for example, can be famous for their character, like the things that they do. Like Pat is famous for being funny, I would say.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
That's what I'm famous for.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Or they might be famous for their actions too.
Yeah.
Or different places are famous for their culture or for the food that they make there.
Yeah. Britain is famous for its bad weather and bad food, for example.
Oh dear.
Yeah, that's the truth. Okay, so this area of Hsinchu is famous for persimmons, but why? What is it about this area that makes it so good for drying these kinds of fruits? Well, the article explains the hot sun, lack of rain, and windy weather that are common during the fall create the perfect conditions for this. Now, we say there's a lack of rain. If there's a lack of something, it can mean there is none of something, or just there isn't enough of something. There isn't a great deal. So this part of Taiwan around Hsinchu County, they don't get a lot of rain.
Right.
It's actually to do with the hills or mountains. They sort of block a lot of the clouds or send them off another way or something.
Yeah.
So not a lot of rain falls there.
Yeah.
Here's another example of lack of. There's a lack of good restaurants in this area. So maybe there's one or maybe two good ones, but there's a lack of good ones. There's not enough good food in this area. We always have to go elsewhere to find the things we want to eat.
Right. Yeah, so conditions here is a plural noun. Usually it's plural. So the conditions are the facts about a situation. So like how are things in the situation and what does the conditions let us do? So it's like what we need in order to do something. So if you want to grow plants, the conditions you want for growing plants are, of course, sunshine, water, good air, and good soil. And maybe some other things like you need a particular kind of growing aid or something.
Something in the soil, something to put on them, etc.
Yes, it depends on the plant. So here's another example of conditions. The conditions are perfect for swimming at the beach today. It's sunny and the waves aren't too high. So that means the situation at the beach, it's really good for swimming. It has all the things you need to swim safely and have a good time.
Okay, so we've got this area. It's great for drying persimmons because of all this, again, we said it's the right sun, temperature, not too much rain, a decent bit of wind. But as we see in the article, it doesn't just take the right time and place to dry persimmons, though. You can't just leave them there in the weather and they will dry them out properly. You need something more.
Yeah, indeed. The article says it also takes the right group of people. So, of course, you know, drying persimmons is something that people have to learn how to do, and they have to do it a certain way. And so who are these people who like to dry these persimmons?
Well, the article says it is the Hakka people who created this method of preserving persimmons centuries ago. So we've got a few things to look at in this sentence of the article. The first one is the word method. It's a noun, and a method is the way in which something is done, often following a step-by-step process, and kind of a logical process as well, and it's just the way you do it. For example, think of learning. People learn in different ways. They use different methods. Some people learn a thing by watching it, some by listening and someone telling them about it, and some people only learn by doing that actual thing. So 3 different methods of learning. Here's another example. My mum showed me the best method for cooking a Thanksgiving turkey. What do I have to do? What's the right steps? And so on.
Yeah, okay, so different ways of doing things, but this particular method they use to preserve persimmons. So preserve here is a verb that means to keep something or make something into a condition to be used over a long time. Usually it's talking about food or some other organic thing like plants. Usually it's keeping food in a way that it can be eaten even a long time after it's been produced. So for example, a way of preserving meat, you dry it into jerky, which is like this really tough kind of snack.
Or in the old days, people would cover it in salt, wouldn't they?
Yeah, so salt is another way of preserving food. Or if you want to preserve fruit, you often do that by making it into jam. If you want to preserve vegetables, particularly if you want to do cucumbers, radishes, or something like that, you put them in salt water or vinegar, and then they turn into pickles.
Yeah, like kimchi is like preserved. So as well, in that sentence, we used a particular kind of grammar. We started it by saying, it is something something, that something something something. And we call this kind of sentence a cleft sentence. In the article we said, it is the Hakka people who created this method of preserving persimmons centuries ago. A cleft sentence is used to emphasize an element by putting it in a separate clause, and you use a kind of empty introductory word such as it or that to start the sentence. Now we want to draw attention to the Hakka people. They are the ones who created this method. So to make it easy, we could just say, the Hakka people created this method of preserving blah blah blah. But if we say, it is the Hakka people who created this method of preserving and so on, that forces the reader or the listener to pay more attention to the fact that the Hakka people did it. Here's another example. It was on Sunday that I finally met Jenny for the first time. We want to draw attention to the fact that it was Sunday when this happened. So as we just saw, it is the Hakka people who created this method. Okay? The article then goes on to say, in fact, persimmons are connected to the history and culture of the Hakka.
Right.
Now we started that sentence with the phrase in fact, and we use that just to introduce a fact. Now sometimes this can correct a piece of incorrect information. Pat, are you from Australia? In fact, I'm from England. However, in fact can also be used to, like in our article, add further facts, add more information.
Right. So, I mean, of course, in fact, this is very connected to the Hakka people's culture. So what the article says is, hundreds of years ago, the Hakka suffered many wars and often needed to flee to escape conflict. Okay, so here we're talking about they're going through something very hard, which is the verb suffer. So suffer is a verb that means going through a hard time of pain or losing something or being sad. Usually it's caused by some kind of negative life event, like going through a war in the sentence's case, or being ill, or somebody you loved has died, or it could just be something even very small like work stress that could cause you to suffer. And suffer can be a transitive verb or an intransitive verb. In this case, it's transitive, so it has an object, suffer many wars. So another example of suffer, Adrienne suffered a serious illness last year and is still trying to get back her strength.
Okay, so the Hakka suffered in these wars, maybe people attacked them, and when this happened, they had to flee. Flee is a verb, past tense is fled, F-L-E-D, and to flee means to run away from danger. You could flee from a person, flee from a place, or flee from a thing. Now you can use the preposition from, but you don't really need to. So the people fled from the war, and the people fled the war mean the same thing. The noun form of this word is flight. So if somebody is fleeing, we can talk about their flight.
Right, of course. And now we're going to go and learn about escape, which is a very similar word. Okay, so this verb, which is escape, if we say the Hakka were fleeing the war to escape, so escape is a very similar word to flee, however it has a little bit different meaning. Escape can also mean get away from a situation that's unpleasant or dangerous, so fleeing is running away, escaping is also running away. However, escaping can also mean you are already out of the situation. You are already out of danger. So for an example sentence, Kerry and his family managed to escape the typhoon by leaving town before it hit, which means that they were able to get away before the typhoon arrived. They didn't just have to run away and we don't know if they're okay or not. We know they're okay because they escaped.
Okay, so the Hakka are fleeing, they're trying to escape, and one of the things they're trying to escape, we kind of mentioned this, was conflict.
Of course.
Conflict is when two or more sides are fighting one another. Now this could be in an actual war, as we use in the article. A conflict could also be between two people who don't like each other. They're arguing, they're always trying to kind of be best and push the other one down. They're in some kind of conflict, like a workplace conflict. Could be an argument of some kind. They're both trying to say, oh boss, I'm right, that kind of thing.
So a conflict could be big or small.
Exactly. Now here's an example of a big one. The conflict between the two nations began 3 years ago and hasn't stopped since. So obviously there we're talking about a war. But how does all this kind of Hakka history relate to these persimmons?
Well, that's an interesting question because you think of war and how would it relate to this particular food? Well, the article says they began drying their food so it would be light and easy to transport while on the road. That makes sense. If they're always having to move, they want to be able to carry their food with them. So transport here is an important verb, which means to carry from one place to another, usually kind of a long way, and usually you do it by vehicles, like you will transport by car or train, plane, boat, anything else. It can be, you can transport things or you can transport people. So if you're transporting a thing, while it's being transported, it's usually called cargo. If you're transporting a person, like if you're a person riding a train or riding in a car, you're called a passenger. So as a noun, transport can be turned into transportation. Or it can also be transport with the stress on trans instead of port. So public transport or public transportation is something you might have heard. All right, another example of the verb transport. We called a moving truck to help us transport our furniture to our new house across town. Okay, so they're trying to
They're
move
traveling,
things
they're
around.
going from place to place, they are on the road.
Yeah, exactly. So this is our pocket phrase go for today, this on the road phrase. Let's check it out.
Pocket Phrase Go!
大家好，我就是最可爱、人见人爱的洋娃娃安娜贝尔。哎，你想跟我一起玩吗？哈哈哈哈！是说啊，要找一个好的玩伴啊，还真是不简单啊。I am on the road about 3 weeks a month。1个月呢，有大概3个礼拜的时间啊，我都在旅途上找玩伴。因为呢，不超过1个礼拜，我的新玩伴就会搬家了。On the road 在路上呢，就表示在旅途当中哦，奔波在外。比方说呢，当业务很辛苦，要在外面跑客户哦 ，on the road， 或者是呢，乐团呢巡回表演也可以是 on the road。不跟你多说，我要去找我的新朋友喽。
So that's the phrase on the road. If you're on the road, you are quite literally on that road. You are traveling from one place to another. We generally mean on the road, but I guess any kind of transport could work, no matter what sort of where you're going. And you could be traveling by any means. You could be in a car, you could be on a bus, you could even be walking. For example, maybe you try to call someone, but they don't answer the phone because they are on the road. They're driving somewhere.
Yeah.
You know, or you could say, hey, I'll call you from the road. Basically, that means like, I will call you to say, hey, I'm driving right now. I'll be home in 2 hours.
Okay.
And hopefully in that case, you use a special car phone and you don't use your phone while you're driving.
Right.
Because that's crazy and dangerous.
Or pull over and call.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Call and say, hey, I'm on the road. I'm just getting gas. I'll see you in an hour when I get home, something like that.
Right.
So that brings us back to the article. They're traveling, the Hakka people. They're going from place to place and they think, well, we need to bring as much food as possible, so we need to dry it out so it'll last a long time, it'll take up less space,
Right.
all that kind of thing.
Yeah, because things will be less heavy when they're dried out. So yeah, the article says during these difficult times, dried persimmons became their main food source. Okay, that makes sense because it's easy to carry. It's probably nutritious.
Yep, and if they come from an area where there's plenty of them, then they just go, okay, grab all of these persimmons, we'll quickly dry them out. We can probably even dry them out on the road.
Yeah, exactly.
They kind of, use that process. And so the persimmons became a main food source, something they eat a lot of. So they're really important, and that's why the article says they're still an important symbol of the living history of the ancient Hakka. So living history kind of means the history hasn't been forgotten. It's being remembered. It is still going on. And people today are remembering what's happened before and keeping some of those old traditions alive.
Right, exactly. So it's a history that hasn't really finished yet.
Yeah, it's not like the history of Rome where we might read about where it's kind of over. This is history that is still going on and still being carried out by the Hakka people. And these persimmons are a symbol of it. They can look at them, they can talk about them and remember, hey, this is part of our culture. This is something that's very important. It's It's a symbol, it's a thing that sort of stands for
Yeah.
our whole experience that we had in the past.
Yeah, so you didn't know that food could be such an important thing to people's history or mean so much to them. But there you go.
Okay, well that's the end of the first part of the article. We will come back in day 2 and look a bit more at the process of drying and where you can go today to see that being done. Right now, however, we're going to go to our For You chat question.
Okay, let's go.
For You chat.
So the question, article's been about dried persimmons, but what other kinds of fruit do people eat dried, and do you like them?
Yeah, I would say dried fruits are a really nice snack. I like to eat dried banana chips.
Oh, I can't stand bananas.
Really? Oh.
Horrible things. Mangoes, dried mangoes, that's what I like.
All right, that's fair. All right, everybody has different preferences. So
Yeah.
dried bananas. Also, my friend gave me dried pineapple slices recently, which
They'd
are really
be good.
nice.
Yeah. I like a lot raisins. I always like raisins. Dried grapes or other forms of things like that. No,
Not a raisin person.
Okay. I have a breakfast cereal which has dried strawberries in.
Oh yeah, those are very good.
Yeah, my wife loves dried strawberries.
Yeah.
When she was pregnant, that was kind of one of her things that she wanted to have.
Yeah.
Dried strawberries. Don't know
sure.
why, just wanted them. So there you go. Those are some examples of dried fruits. You can see loads more if you go to the 7-Eleven. There are actually a whole rack of dried guava, dried cranberries, dried
hawthorns, dried plums.
Plums,
Yeah.
all sorts of things like that. I'm sure you can find them. But we're on about persimmons, and we'll talk more about them tomorrow. For now, for English For You, I'm Pat.
And I'm Kat.
Talk to you again soon. Bye.
Bye.
Drying and dyeing persimmons in Hsinpu Township. Every fall, the bright sun shines down on fragrant persimmons drying in the open air of Hsinpu Township. This area of Hsinchu County is famous for these sweet, bright orange fruits that are dried in the traditional way. The hot sun, lack of rain, and windy weather that are common during the fall create the perfect conditions for this. It doesn't just take the right time and place to dry persimmons, though. It also takes the right group of people. It is the Hakka people who created this method of preserving persimmons centuries ago. In fact, persimmons are connected to the history and culture of the Hakka. Hundreds of years ago, the Hakka suffered many wars and often needed to flee to escape conflict. They began drying their food so it would be light and easy to transport while on the road. During these difficult times, dried persimmons became their main food source. They're still an important symbol of the living history of the ancient Hakka.
Vocabulary Review.
Conditions. Many employees here have complained about the poor working conditions. Method. My mother taught my father a new method for preparing gongbao chicken. Suffer. Nelson suffered some serious injuries in the car accident yesterday. Escape. The prisoner dug a hole through the wall of his cell in order to escape from the prison. Conflict. The conflict between the two countries might result in a war. Transport. This delicious beef was transported to Australia all the way from Kobe, Japan.
智慧小補帖
Fragrant. Preserve. Flee.
以上節目是由活用空中美語製作，活用空中美語雜誌，請洽詢全國各大書店。 如欲索取視聽教材，請來電02-2364-4000 02-2364-4000，或上網查詢，網址是 www.english4u.net www.english4u.net